is so good to be with you guys. 2018, man, it's a new year. It's a new remix, right? We're having this on Tuesdays. Are you guys having fun? That was brutal. Like 6 of you guys are having fun. Are you guys having fun? That's what I am talking about. Hey, so if you're new to Remix, here's kind of how it works. We have some fun, right? We sit and we do worship. We have some fun. We play games. We do all kinds of crazy stuff. Sometimes kids eat like spaghetti with marshmallows. If you've ever seen the movie Elf, right? Right? And so we do stuff like this. We do stuff like that, but then also what we do at Remix, Eliza, is we talk about Jesus, right? Like I always come up here and I give a sermon and we talk about real things. Because let's be honest, we can have fun and we can do all kinds of stuff, but you guys deal with things. You guys are currently dealing with things. You're dealing with a lot of things, in fact. Life's not easy, is it? And so we're here to walk through that with you. Today we're going to talk about something that literally every single one of you, Azrael, enough. Literally every single one of you deal with. And I'm going to tell a story about 2 sons, and I would argue that every single one of you could see yourself in those sons. Maybe both at the same time, or maybe just one of them. And at the end of this, I'm going to give you guys a chance to make a choice. If you're going to continue living like these sons, or if you're going to do a next step, right? Day 1, right? That's our whole mantra. That's what we're calling this. But is it going to be one day or day 1? That's going to be your choice. And at the end of this, I'm going to give you that choice. Before that, I'm going to tell you guys a story. 2001, right? A guy named Chad Reed was serving in Afghanistan. Right? And he was going, and he had served his term, and he was getting ready to go home. He was going to fly to Denver. And guess what? He lost his wallet. Right? He was away from where he normally was, and he went out to dinner, and then he forgot his wallet. And so you can just imagine his longing for home, him just wanting to be home so bad. But if you guys have ever flown before, then you know that if you don't have an ID, you can't fly. Even if you're in the military, if you don't have an ID, you can't fly. So he's just thinking, wow, this sucks. I can't go anywhere. I got to stay here. Have you guys ever had that moment? Have you guys ever lost something? Right? Have you guys ever lost something? Yeah, my phone like every day, right? But really just lost something. Well, something really good happened. All of a sudden, as Reed's freaking out in Afghanistan, he was scared to tell his family because he was like, man, I'm going to disappoint them. Hopefully I can figure it out. Like, God, just let something happen. Then all of a sudden, this guy named Bill Peasley, who was just like a commercial aircraft mechanic. He was an American guy, but he lived in Afghanistan. I don't know why, right? But just chose to live in Afghanistan. That's where he jobbed. And he was walking, and he found the wallet. And then he contacted the grandfather of Mr. Reed. And the grandfather in Pennsylvania, weirdly, they get in touch. And then hours before his flight takes off, he gets his wallet. Right? He was returned with his wallet and all was well. I remember this one time my father gave me this bracelet. When I was a little kid, I was about 9 years old, gave me this bracelet, and man, I loved it. It was like this thick steel bracelet. We had kind of just moved to New Mexico, and it was like something you wore every single day. And one time, right, I was going to school, and I said, hey, Dad, it was like a big day, right? It was one of those days you dress up, and it's it's going to be awesome. First day of school, actually, is what it was. Right, let's be honest. First day of school, you're super dressed up. Third week of school, you're just sweatpants to school, right? It's you don't care anymore. You're whatever. You guys are all peasants. Anyway, right? So I wear it to school, and everything's awesome, right? I feel cool. It's super heavy, so my arm's dragging. But I'm like, man, this is super cool. And I get to the end of the day, and I realize something. Man, I can move my arm. And I realized I'd lost the bracelet. Like I had gone outside to play and I lost the bracelet. And I asked my teacher, I'm like, hey, can I go look? Can I figure it out? Can I go try to fix it? You know what she said? No. Right, so what do you think after school? Like before I got onto the bus, I'm like sprinting, like sweaty, right? It's gross. They made me wear polos. It's the worst. But like, so I'm like super sweaty. No, polos for school when you're running. It's weird, right? And I'm looking and I'm digging and I'm just dirty. And I never found it. Have you guys ever lost something and you've just never found it? Or a better question is, have you guys ever felt like that something that was lost is actually really you? I mean, let's be honest. We've all had those moments. We talk about it a lot. The ceiling fan moment is what I like to call it. The moments where you're lying in your bed, right? And it's like, for some reason, it's 1 a.m. and you're wide awake and you haven't had caffeine in like a long time, but you're just lying there and every single thought is running through your head as the thing goes boom, 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 right? And you follow one of them so it doesn't look like a bunch and you're just following one round and around. You're questioning like, where am I in life? What is my life? What is my purpose? What am I supposed to do? Like why am I even here? Like, I don't actually like who I am. I don't like why I am born this way. What's up? Has anybody ever had a moment like that? You guys don't know, some of you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. Sometimes we feel lost. If that was you, if that whole ceiling fan moment, if you've had that, then you're going to connect with the first son that I'm talking about. I'm calling this message The Tale of Two Sons, but S-O-N-S. And it's one we talk about a lot because I think it's really, really important. It's in the book of Luke. It is Luke chapter 15. And it's the story of the prodigal son. I'm sure you guys have probably heard it, but stay with me if you have, because there's going to be a little twist at the end. If you've never heard it, if it's your first time to church, it's an awesome, awesome story. It's about this son, right? So it's this man, and he has 2 sons. And the younger son gets bold. And he says, you know what? I'm sick of doing things the way they are. I'm sick of just like being good and like staying at this house. Hey, Dad, I want my inheritance. You guys know what inheritance is? Right? Like if somebody dies, it's what you get. Right? Luke 15:11 says, and he said, there was a man who had 2 sons, Jesus telling the story, and the younger son of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of property that is coming to me. He said, give me my inheritance. I'm sick of living here. I'm sick of being here. This is lame. This isn't fun. There's fun stuff out there. You have these things called rules. You make me clean my room. I can't just do whatever I want. I'm done with it. I'm going to go do whatever I want to do. Right? In chapter 15, verse 13, it says this, not many days later, the younger son gathered all he had and took a journey into a far country. And there he squandered his property in reckless living. So he gets all this money. Dad, for some reason, my dad would be like, right? Like, no way. But his dad gives him this money and he goes off to a far land. And it says that he squanders, gets rid of, just wastes it. Right? He's wasting it on things like food, like the highest elegant of food, like not like Chipotle, but I'm talking like big time. You know what I mean? Like he is balling. He's like, yo, give me 2 of those steaks. I'm not even going to eat one. I'm just going to throw it on the ground because I can. Like he is living it. And he's also doing other things. He's getting drunk. He's sleeping with women. Right? Like he is doing things and just wasting his money. He's wasting his money on things that he feels like will be fun. Right? My house didn't have this, so I'm going to go do it. This is what's going to give me joy. This is what's going to bring me happiness. Finally, I found it. Right? I'm sure he had that ceiling fan moment and he thought, oh, you know what? I'm just going to go do all these things and then I'll be good. And then he spends his money and he spends his money and he spends his money to where he has no more money left. And it says that he went and he tried to find a job. But then the land that he happened to be in went through a famine. It means there was no food, like they didn't have work. And he finally found work in a pigsty. Right, like if you guys have ever heard of a pig, you know that they're disgusting, except bacon's delicious. But pigs, where they live, is disgusting. And what they eat, man, they'll eat anything. Like literally a pig will pretty much eat anything. And he worked in one of those sties, and it says in Luke 15:16, it says, and he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything. This man was so hungry, the food, the slop is a way that another version puts it. The slop that the pigs, like this water that's just this disgusting brown thing, he thought, oh, that looks so good. And then as he's pouring it, his mouth is just watering. He's so desperate, so desperate for food that even a pig's food sounds good, right? We are like, hey, what kind of pizza is that? Oh, not pepperoni? No. But this guy's like, dude, I'll eat the box, right? Like he's like, I will eat literally anything. And then he thinks to himself, you know what? I done messed up. Right? He says, like, even the slaves in my father's house eat better than this. Like, I actually had it pretty good. I had a roof over my head. I had food. I was taking care of. This stuff that I've been wasting my life on that I thought was going to bring me joy actually hasn't done anything except bring me poverty, except make me want to eat pigs' food. Right? He goes, you know, my father's servants eat better than this. So he makes a plan. Right? We've all been there, haven't we? We get ourselves in some trouble and we go, I've got a plan. I've figured it out. He says this in verse 18 and 19. It says, I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants. If you guys haven't noticed yet, the father in the story is representative of God. And the son in the story, that's representative of me and you. And we've all been there, haven't we? If we're being super honest with ourselves. We've all messed up, and the next morning you wake up and you're like, oh, I done messed up. And then we feel like we're not worthy of being, right? You hear me say, like, hey, you guys are sons and daughters. Right? You are sons and daughters of the king. And then we mess up and we go, yo, I'm not worthy of that, but I can be a servant. I'll just do a bunch of good things. That's what I'll do. Right? He says, hey, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to tell my father, like, hey, I've messed up. Treat me as one of your hired servants. And we expect God to say, okay, be a servant. Just do a bunch of good things. Yeah, you're right. You messed up. How could you do that? Just be a servant. Just be my slave. That's what we expect. But it says that he got up and he went to his father. I think we've all had that moment too, where we realize, hey man, maybe I actually don't have it all figured out. Hey man, maybe like what I'm doing that I thought was going to bring me joy, maybe that's not actually the key. Maybe that's not exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And it's this hope, right? That like, hey, if I go back, something better will happen. So you guys come to church. And you think that if you raise your hands in the air, that's just doing something good. And if you hold the door open for somebody, that's just doing something good. But check out what the father says. It says, and he arose and came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And I love this. Right, it says that when he was a long way off, insinuating that the father has been looking the whole time for him to come home, right? And when he was a long way off, the father starts sprinting and embraces him because remember, he was with pigs. This dude stunk. You would think that the father would come up and be like, hey, oh, dude, you reek. I need you to take a shower and then let's do this whole hug thing. But no, he throws his hands over him, right? And it says that he embraces him and that he kisses him. He welcomes him home. There's a painting, right? A rich man asked this artist to do a painting. He says, hey, I want you to paint the story of the prodigal son. And he does it. And so a few months later, this artist calls him back and says, hey, I've done it. right? And then he goes and he sees the painting. Rich man's like, wow, that's beautiful. This really depicts it, except there's one problem. The father's shoes, they don't match. Like I don't know if you forgot to paint this or what. He said, this dude's got a yellow and a blue shoe. But you know what the painter said? He said, I think that perfectly depicts how God is with us, that he doesn't care if his shoes are matching. He just wants to get out there and go. He just wants to get out there and he wants to embrace you. He doesn't care how he looks. He doesn't care what you think. He just wants to come and embrace you. And I love that. And then the Father does something even after that. Right? The Son goes and he says, like, he has this whole thing he rehearsed, right? And whenever we pray, we're the same way. We like rehearse, like, okay, I'm just going to say this to God, and then it's going to be good, and he's going to forgive me, but then like I'm going to be a slave. And he starts to say, he goes, hey, Father, I have sinned against you, like against you in heaven. Please just treat me as your hired servant. But what I love about this, it says, but the father said to his servants, this is in verse 21 and 22, it says, but the father said to his servants, bring quickly the best robe and put it on him, and put on a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. The father doesn't even notice the apology, doesn't even notice like this whole like contract of like, hey, I'm going to come back, but then like I'll be your servant. No. He says, hey, bring him the robe. You know what that meant? Instantly, that separated him into sonship. Instantly, when the man put on a robe, that separated him from his slave. So once he put the robe on, instant sonship. But then the father goes even further, right? It says he puts a ring on his finger. What this ring back in the olden times did is it allowed him to do his business in town. And lastly, he put on sandals. Slaves and poor people were barefoot. But by him putting on sandals, he instantly brought him back into his family. Right, and the father says this, for this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and found, and they began to celebrate. So maybe that's you. Maybe you feel like you're the one who's just been doing the wayward things, right? You've been trying all these things, and yet you feel depressed. You've been trying all these things, and yet you still cut. You've been trying all these things, and yet you still feel like taking your life's the better option. Or maybe some of you guys are like the other son. It's not talked about a lot. I've deemed him the pretentious son. Pretentious, thinks he's better. See, some of you guys instantly, once I started talking about this, you shut off. Because you said, wait a second, I've been coming to church this whole time. I actually don't struggle with drugs. I don't struggle with sex. I get it, Cody. This is for those like crazy people. I'm just going to chill, and then we'll do worship and it'll be fun. But there's a second son in the story. Right, and then he's out in the field and he's working. He's out in the field and he's working, and he hears this like cheer. Right, because the son, or the father, ordered for a fattened calf to be killed. Have a meal, he's going to have a feast. His son was home. And the pretentious son is out in the field and he goes, hey, what's going on? And one of the slaves says, hey, your brother, the one that squandered all the money away, that just lived crazy, he's home and your dad's throwing a party. And it says that the pretentious son did this. It says, but he was angry and refused to go in. His father came out and entreated him. It means like his father came out and was like, hey, why don't you come in? And this is his response. He answered to the father, look, these many years I've served you, and I've never disobeyed your command, yet you never gave me a young goat that I might celebrate with my friends. And I'm sure that some of you guys who have been to church might feel that. Right? You see these people who are living this life that you know isn't good, and yet why are they joyous and you hate yourself? And then you instantly start judging, and you think that you're better, and you're like, I'm not going to attend that party. And if they become a Christian, you're like, about good time, right? Welcome to my domain. Welcome to church. But when in turn, man, you're just as lost as the other one. The other person just recognizes it. So my question is, where are you at? Maybe you're both. Maybe you're the prodigal son, right? And you just hear God. Revelation 3 says that Jesus is continuously knocking on the door of your heart, waiting for you to open it up so he can come in and have a meal with you. Maybe that's you right now. And you finally feel like, hey, I just need to fix something because what I'm doing right now isn't helping. Because the way I'm trying to live, man, that's not conducive to anything. Actually, I've never felt more broken, never felt more alone, never felt more hated. I've never hated myself more than I do right now. Or maybe you're the pretentious one. And whenever I say those words, it kind of hits home because you're like, wait, I have been judging people. Wait, I have been that guy. So I'm going to invite the worship team up. We're going to sing 2 more songs. And while we do that, I just want to invite you guys. I'm going to have my prayer and decision team come up as well. And fellas, I'm going to have you come over here. And ladies, I'm going to have you come over here. And maybe this is the day that you decide, you know what, I'm going to make a change. Maybe this is the day that you decide, you know what, I'm done. Day 1, right? I said at the beginning, it's either day 1 or it's either one day I'll get right, one day I'll figure it out, one day I'll finally come to the person who says that they can bring me joy, or today's day 1. I've got my leaders and I've got my friends, and they're here to pray with you. If you've never accepted Jesus, that's okay. We want to walk through that with you. We want to give you a Bible. We want to give you steps. So as we do this first worship song, I just want to invite you guys, if that's knocking on your heart, and if you say, you know what, Cody, I'm sick of living the way that I'm living. I'm sick of doing the things I'm doing because guess what? It's not working. I just want you to come up here. It's not, lights are going to be off. It's not going to be embarrassing. Nobody here is going to judge you. In fact, if somebody gets up, I want you guys to clap. Because that's somebody saying, I've had enough. Today is day 1 of the rest of my life. Today is day 1 of feeling and knowing that I'm so loved by the Father that God would literally not even care about what color his shoes are just because he cares that I'm home.